What is up, everybody? Solomon here. I hope you guys are all having a fantastic Monday. Some of this information you just cannot make up. It's amazing to see when you stumble across it. This is gigantic. This document right here is essentially from an individual that has certainly worked with Ripple, that has certainly worked on the Interledger protocol in the past, and has worked with Ripple, potentially even maybe in the development of it based on the time frame that this presents. This is a newer document. This is published May 4th, 2021, but I believe that it was publicly published within the past week because 3 or 4 days ago is when it populated to download the PDF when I was doing targeted searches this morning. This is from Alex Pentland. This individual certainly has relationships, as we will see just by reading this document and who he acknowledges in the thank yous, with some of the largest banking organizations globally. This individual certainly knows about Ripple, and we'll see that here in a second as well. So let's keep in mind Alex Pentland, and then I think that it's an invaluable tool for us to read through this document. I'm going to try to still keep this as short as I possibly can. First and foremost, Alex Pentland. This is Ripple partnering with MIT for the Blockchain Education Initiative right here. Alex Pentland played a big role dealing directly with Ripple. So this is this January, this is 2016, so we're going back in time a little bit here. And fellow Ripple project leader Thomas Harjono published an early draft of their work on Chain Anchor. While the final draft of the paper is not yet available online, the early version describes Chain Anchor as a meaning of retaining user anonymity with a permissioned blockchain. The Ripple project, in turn, is led by Alex Pentland, Managing Director David Schreier, and Chief Technical Officer Thomas Harjono. We can see right now, he's obviously has relationships with Ripple, right? Now, what this individual has been a part of over the past, however many number of years here, he directs the MIT's Connection Science and Human Dynamics Lab, previously helped create and direct the MIT Media Lab Asia, one of the most powerful data scientists in the entire world, 7 most powerful along with Google founders. He's the Chief Technical Officer of the United States, co-led with the World Economic Forum discussion in Davos that led to the EU privacy regulation GDPR, was essential in forging the transparency and accountability mechanisms in the UN Sustainable Development Goals. That's the United Nations. You can run the gambit here, right? It's just completely ridiculous who this individual is certainly involved in. We're moving forward a little bit in time, right? This is January 11th, 2018. This is a Trust Data annual meeting that was obviously led by Alex Pentland once again. The members and supporters of this meeting, Accenture, Intuit, NEC, MasterCard, UBS, IBM, Ripple, Nomura, MetLife, Government of France, Government of China, Government of Colombia. You get the picture. Jasper Ubin is mentioned in this document that he had just published very recently. Jasper Ubin was a Central Bank of Canada, Monetary Authority of Singapore, co-led initiative for enabling cross-border high-value transfer using distributed ledger technologies, powered by Accenture, and we have JP Morgan here as well. But they directly talk about Interledger protocol multiple times in this document. Also, Project Ubin in itself, Project Ubin Phase 2, Accenture, this deals in Interledger as well. I'm going to move forward because I think that this document that he just recently presented is much more important. These are some of the research articles that they published. We can see Alex Pentland, Thomas Harjono. Now, if you're not aware, Interledger protocol was invented by Ripple and essentially gifted to the W3C. Interledger protocol is basically just a value-agnostic protocol and method for transferring value pretty much anywhere to anyone. It doesn't care if it uses a digital asset. However, Interledger can interoperate with digital assets. Ethereum and XRP are kind of the most standard examples given if you do your research into ILP. W3C and who they are, the World Wide Web Consortium, is the main international standards organization for the World Wide Web. Founded in 1994 and currently led by Tim Berners-Lee, the consortium is made up of member organizations that maintain full-time staff working together in the development of standards for the internet. That's kind of the last thing there. It's kind of funny. All right, so I'm going to read this because I think it's very important. I'm going to try to get through this quickly, but this validates absolutely everything that we think about the blockchain space, about the digital asset space, everything. All right, this is called Our Digital Future, From the Internet to the Interledger. During drafting of the Sustainable Development Goals, Alex was part of the United Nations Secretary's General Data Revolution Team, quote unquote. It was clear that digital systems were proving to be a fundamental revolution in human development, and so it was important that the power of data and data analytics be incorporated into the SDGs. In the subsequent years, this revolution has not stopped or even slowed down. The world is becoming ever more digital. Today, this revolution is no longer proceeding application by application and nation by nation. Instead, we are seeing a convergence from separate digital systems for each application and each nation to unified, all-purpose digital ledgers that handle finance, commerce, capital, and tax transactions across the globe. These new ledgers are also a natural home for and extension of central bank digital currencies and are being promoted by trade countries such as Singapore, Switzerland, and China as a safer and cheaper way to conduct business. While the combination of many different types of transactions on government-sponsored platforms allows greater security and real-time auditing for fraud detection and instabilities, it also raises questions around governance and control. Consequently, there is an urgent need to achieve international consensus on standards and principles of governance, and this will be a critical issue for the UN and other multilateral organizations to address. They need essentially a digital Bretton Woods. Let me read that again. They need a digital Bretton Woods Accord to establish the rules of international digital interaction. This individual, who has obviously worked with Ripple's hope is that by the 2030 UN development goals, they'll incorporate universal deployment of such rules. By 2045, the digital world will have a safe, inclusive, accountable, and balanced ecology of data and AI for everything from trade and financial to medical services and government. This document is huge. There's so many things in here that just give us exactly what we are expecting to receive as far as what we're looking for where we want our digital assets to potentially go in the future here. Evolution of internet from a communication to a transaction medium. That sounds very familiar, right? Internet of value, correct? Digital technologies are making it cheaper, easier, and safer to do business with anyone, anywhere, anytime. The current tidal wave of new digital technologies and social disruptions are symptoms of a much bigger change. The very internet itself is being transformed, evolving from a loosely structured communications medium to a trusted execution medium. Instead of the internet allowing seamless, inexpensive communication of data everywhere, we are seeing the emergence of the Interledger, which allows seamless, inexpensive transactions of all sorts, everywhere and with everyone. To accelerate this trend, trading nations are introducing a quote-unquote new transaction layer on top of the existing internet, which has the potential to finally allow both companies and citizens to safely and securely do business with each other, to let each party know who they are dealing with, confirm the interaction is not fraudulent, and to have the outcomes easily enforceable. Trustless, right? The impact of a transition from separate and competing quote-unquote rails for different types of transactions to a unified digital platform is difficult to overstate. It offers the possibility of AI, artificial intelligence-driven continuous audit of a type much deeper and more complete than current audits, of vastly increased fraud detection abilities, and of course much lower cost and greater safety. It is conceivable that this new technology will eventually be seen as important as the invention of double-entry accounting. With the insight that the internet is evolving to the Interledger, again, we can put the emergence of technologies like blockchain and AI in context. They are a consequence of the limitations of the internet and a logical extension of the technology evolution we've been witnessing for the past 50 years. Certainly since the first personal computers were invented in the early days of the ARPANET. The people who built the ARPANET designed it as a way to ensure reliable military communication in case of nuclear attack. The system was later extended to keep municipalities and universities connected as well as protect important information, but it failed to provide adequate security and auditability. And so it never developed to the trusted systems we need for commerce and government. AI and blockchain are part of a set of evolving global software platforms, legal protocols, and economic structures that are better suited for a connected world. A key development that is driving the evolution is the deployment of quote-unquote trust chain systems by trading nations, such as China, Singapore, and Switzerland. And then he has in parentheses here, which we helped engineer. So he's essentially saying that the work that Alex Pentland was doing, probably through MIT and some other initiatives, helped engineer trust chain ecosystems, which are certainly interconnected ecosystems from a value-based standpoint, with nations, an entire nation such as China, Singapore, and Switzerland. These new systems combine open alliance, legal agreements, distributed ledger technology, and end-to-end encryption to allow businesses to monitor transactions from anywhere on the planet and be confident that they are secure. that data was used only as we expected, and that transactions are irrefutable. This is ridiculous, in my opinion. I'm sorry if it's not hypey, if it's not slow, if it isn't what you want this to be, but this is a gigantic document. This tells us exactly what we're all expecting to see. The Interledger, national quote-unquote trust chains, national trust chains, are new all-inclusive distributed ledger platforms for smart cities, commerce, government, and finance that are being deployed, not being tested, being deployed by governments and national champions within countries such as China, the United States, Singapore, Switzerland, and others. Through interoperability agreements, they form the emerging Interledger. In addition to considerations of security and efficiency, deployment of trust chain platforms is being driven by the rush to issue national digital currencies, which use these same technologies to facilitate payments and tax collections. He's literally telling you there that these are being deployed. There's these interoperable mechanisms being deployed right now by all of the major governments in the entire world, and that there is a rush to utilize and issue national digital currencies. There will certainly be a place for the digital currencies and companies and blockchain that have probably helped build out those national digital currencies. An example of these new government-backed Interledger platforms is the Ubin project, sponsored by Singapore's Monetary Authority and Temasek Sovereign Wealth Fund. Now, we know that Interledger certainly referenced Ubin certainly referenced Interledger protocol as well. The Chinese systems are more developed but less well documented, while the Swiss trust chain is at an earlier stage of development. The Singapore assessment of the Ubin platform is that it demonstrated successful development of a domestic multi-currency payments network and showcased that the model can be implemented as an international settlement model, which could bring about cheaper, faster, and safer cross-border payments. In order to determine the commercial viability and value of this blockchain-based payments network, they brought together a broad ecosystem of financial players and non-financial services companies. Their conclusion was that the platform demonstrated the applicability of blockchain technology beyond capital markets and trade finance. The project has also explored the additional functionalities that can be provided by deploying smart contracts on the Ubin network. Smart contracts enable the codification of business rules or logic as a set of programming codes that will execute fairly and faithfully without the need for a trusted third party. The flexibility provided by smart contracts enable rapid prototyping, testing, and the deployment of additional functionalities such as payment commitments, request to pay, and pool payments. The Ubin project team piloted more than a dozen use cases beyond payments, broadly categorized into 4 areas: capital markets, trade, supply chain finance, insurance, and general transaction contracts beyond financial services. These new digital platforms offer greatly enhanced ability to address the world's challenges, but they create their own dangers. Transition to more digital infrastructure risks unhealthy concentration of power and threats to community and national values and norms. The deployment of new data and transaction/AI platforms risks creating a quote-unquote Cold War between technology blocks, leaving less developed nations at the mercy of a few powerful governments and generally degrading the ability of the world to deal with global challenges. Driving forces, and I'm out of breath already. Perhaps the main force driving the deployment of Interledger technology is the need to repair the world's tattered finances, coupled with the emergence of China as a major international power. Current levels of public debt are at levels not seen since World War II, and simultaneously national economies are in disarray. Many nations are feeling that the time to act is now. Another game-changing and accelerating development has been that of national digital currencies and central bank digital currencies, or CBDCs. China has released their digital currency. Singapore has piloted multi-digital CBDC capabilities. And small states such as Bermuda have released a CBDC for social support and financial inclusion purposes. The MIT group helped with that design of Bermuda's CBDC. A community of over 40 central banks, international organizations, academic researchers, and financial institutions have begun to create frameworks to help central banks evaluate, design, and potentially deploy CBDCs. Their deployment in China, Southeast Asia, and soon in the EU provides greater efficiency, effectiveness, and inclusion at global scale. However, which standards, norms, laws, and currencies will govern these new transaction platforms? The deployment of these new digital trade platforms will provide nations with possibilities for rearranging the dynamics of trade and influencing other nations in ways that are far less valuable than implied by official policy or treaty. This suggests that a quote-unquote new Bretton Woods multilateral effort is required, with the goal of establishing interfaces, methods, and exchange standards for digital transaction platforms such as those developed by China, Singapore, and Switzerland. Unlike the World War II Bretton Woods effort, such coordination must not only be centered around banking and finance, but must be intimately dependent on digital technical standards for trade and the unified risk science needed to measure and forecast interactions between finance, sustainability, and social factors. The challenges: the digitization of everything. We've talked about this so many times. This document is gigantic. The digitization of absolutely everything means that society faces an unprecedented set of challenges and opportunities. These challenges are perhaps most apparent in the new transaction platforms because they bring together all types of transactions, touch every aspect of society, and affect every organization and citizen in a direct, fine-grained manner. The issues digitalization presents are complex, emergent, and demand new approaches which deliver impact at both the global and local level. Along with the challenges of complexity and uncertainty of digitalization is the speed at which change occurs. Shared understandings and collective decisions need to be made in shorter time periods than ever before. Remember Christine Lagarde when she said, everything seems to be happening slow, and then all at once. Same thing here. The complexity involved in digital transformation demands that various quote-unquote layers of the challenge be understood and acted upon in a coordinated and holistic manner. From a technology perspective, data needs to be more accessible and standardized in a more coherent and interoperable manner. Alliance block. While at the same time protecting private and proprietary data. The data infrastructure needs to be made more ubiquitous, affordable, and most importantly, more secure to address the times 10 increase in cyber attacks that is anticipated to accompany the rollout of 5G and the Internet of Things. Technologies such as federated artificial intelligence, distributed ledgers, open legal alliances, and business models such as data exchanges are making this possible. In addition to the complexity of the transition to digitalization, another dimension which society needs to attend is the velocity of the change. Driven by the exponential increase in network technologies, the velocity of change within the geopolitical and social context is unprecedented. Likewise, the rate of change within the private sector has accelerated as new transformative and highly collaborative business models are emerging. All of this demands that leaders have a more holistic and globally systemic view of how digitalization is impacting entire ecosystems. Coordination and cooperation are helping the world address these several interlinked digitalization changes. From a data perspective, one of the most hopeful points of progress during the COVID-19 pandemic is the increasing support from Fortune 500 enterprises, etc., etc. Okay, I'm going to try to get through this. There are two main areas where international agreement and transnational initiatives could make important difference in the evolution and emergence of the Interledger. These are 1, digital transaction auditing and standards enforcement, and 2, governance. These two topics will be discussed more in detail below. It must be kept in mind that any framework will inevitably include both international treaty, national and local laws and regulations, as well as technical standards. There are many initiatives currently underway, but they lack overall coordination. It must be recognized that complete uniformity is impossible due to differing norms and local conditions. Instead, discussion should focus on establishing norms of interaction, auditing, accountability, and governance between communities. Payments and some other types of financial transactions are examples of such systems. The basis of good governance is reliable and comparable data, which means that data metrics must be reliably uniform, frequent, and sufficiently fine-grained to allow visibility required for security and regulation. Private companies must contribute to and participate in these systems, but this should not be at a burdensome cost or endanger their competitive position. Foundational to the digital transformation of nations will be the need for strengthened multilateral cooperation to ensure the privacy of citizens and the security of both public and private data systems, e.g., or for example, government systems, but also financial systems, health systems, etc. Every single system that we operate under right now, utilizing the internet, is going to be changed by blockchain. Every single system that we operate under right now, utilizing finance, will be changed by blockchain and distributed ledger technology. Every single data mechanism changed by distributed ledger technology. Everything needs broken down with these silos will be broken down is what this entire document is talking about. But it's going to be broken down by certain agreements via multi-nation agreements. But there's certainly going to be some of these walled gardens that still exist that need bridged through data standards and through mechanisms, agreed upon mechanisms. As 5G and Internet of Things technology are more widely deployed in the coming years, many nations will face increasingly disruptive cyber attacks. Current estimates, etc., Governance for digital platforms. All right, I made it through enough of that, and I'm super out of breath. The dude that worked with Ripple for multiple years, directly mentioning the Interledger and moving from the internet to the Interledger. Now, he's not just talking about Interledger protocol, certainly, but he has worked on Interledger protocol. He's referencing other organizations that have built upon Interledger protocol. He's had direct coordination with Ripple that floats all the way back to 2016. If you think that's by chance, I'm sorry, you're completely mistaken. Ripple has been building out a monster of an ecosystem, gifting the Interledger protocol to the W3C, who we have essentially seen operates and creates standards for the internet. This is not about the internet anymore, though, people. This is about the internet of value. Every single transaction, every single thing that we do flows through DLT at some point in time, or at least data standards that are going to be agreed upon. But this all has to do to deal in money. And trust me, I understand how important information was in the internet of information, but just really think about where the internet of value goes and what we're all holding right now, because it's not an if we're holding the future in our hands right now. And this is the greatest wealth opportunity of our entire lives, probably multiple lives, probably hundreds of years. It's groundbreaking. It's insane. I'm sorry for that long-winded thing. I think that everybody should read this and really kind of understand. If you have family and friends that don't believe with what digital assets and cryptocurrencies are going to essentially mean in the future, and I'm not talking about meme coins, I'm not talking about a $2.2 trillion market cap, I am talking about reinventing every single aspect of life as we know it. Try to put a value on that. Let them read through this document and understand what's actually going on. Last but not least, I wanted to go over who the acknowledgments in this article that Alex Pentland has written are given to. Thanks to the Club de Madrid and World Leaders Alliance for inviting me to lead the discussions that led to this paper, and the OECD, World Bank, IEEE, and World Economic Forum, and especially William Hoffman for comments and suggestions. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day. I'm sure that wasn't short and sweet, but I think that it was important. All right, later.